Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Diamore. I want you to open up your social studies textbook to page 189, chapter 6, Our Country's History. This is definitely one of my favorite topics. I'm so excited that we're going to be starting this together. I'm going to be reading this chapter to you as you follow along in your textbook. There's a few vocabulary words that you're going to need to know, and that is the word shelter, patriotism, and pioneer. Let's begin. Lesson 1, the first communities. The first communities in North America were formed long ago by Native Americans, also called American Indians. Native Americans lived in groups that are now called tribes. The people of a tribe shared the same land and ways of life. The first people. Each Native American group had its own culture and language. A language is a set of words used to communicate. Early Native Americans did not use written languages. They learned about the past from stories told by older family members. These stories made up an oral history. Oral means spoken. There's a picture at the bottom of the page, and the caption reads, "This Ute father and son live in Colorado. They are dressed in clothing like the Utes wore long ago for a celebration." Let's turn to page 191. Take a look at the map on the top of page 191. These are all the Native American groups found across the country. Okay. We are located right over here in this area, and there are a lot of tribes that were located in our area back then. Let's take a read. Page 191, Native Americans. Native Americans once lived in every part of what is now the United States. All groups used natural resources to meet their needs for food, clothing, and shelter. Here's your first vocabulary word. A shelter is a home or other building that protects people from the weather. Because Native American groups lived in different places, they had different natural resources. Remember, boys and girls, we learned about resources in our last chapter. They ate different kinds of foods, wore different clothing, and lived in different shelters. Native Americans who had forests nearby used wood to build shelters. Many groups built villages along rivers, which they used to travel. Those who lived in drier climates found few trees. They built shelters with grasses or mud bricks dried in the sun. And here's a picture of moccasins or shoes that show the skill of a Sioux craft worker. Turn to page 192. Two different ways of life. Native Americans mainly hunted or fished. They also gathered plants, nuts, and wild berries. Other groups added to their food supplies by growing crops and trading. Hunting communities. Native Americans who lived on the Great Plains hunted buffalo or bison. They used every part of an animal. They used the meat for food, the bones for tools, and the skin to make clothes and shelters. Hunting tribes had to keep moving to follow the buffalo. They needed shelters they could move. Their teepees were made from animal skins pulled tight over wooden poles. So take a look at the picture here, and you could see that there is a teepee. It's actually made from animal skins. And it says here, animal skins were used to make teepees and clothing. Families kept everything they owned inside their teepee. You see in the background that there are buffalo. And hunters rode horses and used bows and arrows to hunt buffalo. So we just read about hunting communities, and now we're going to read about farming communities. In addition to hunting and gathering, some Native American groups also grew their food. They raised crops such as corn, beans, and squash. Farmers stored food for the winter. Unlike hunting groups, Native Americans who farmed stayed in one place. They built stronger homes out of wood. The Iroquois, and here's how you pronounce that, Iroquois, built longhouses, or long, narrow houses made of wood and bark. Here's a picture to the right here of an Iroquois dancer beside a longhouse. So to summarize, Native Americans formed the first communities in North America. They lived in different areas and had different ways of living. Okay, boys and girls, once you have finished reading this chapter, then I would like you to fill out the attached Google form. Thank you.